Okay, so I just wanted to firstly say that I'm a science communicator and I'm not a practicing scientist. So I'm not an expert in this area, but it's something that I really find fascinating. Firstly, when you think of a protein, you probably think of protein in your food or protein in cells. But the title of my talk is Protein Shake-Up, so I'm going to maybe shake your thinking of proteins a little bit today. So I'm going to start off with basically there are some proteins out there that have a little bit more sinister, and from what you might think already. So I'm going to start with a little story about a few decades ago, scientists were trying to research what caused this disease in sheep called scrapie. So basically this disease went from sheep to sheep, and they had no idea what was happening. And also, if you killed all the sheep and repopulated the land, it also persisted in the land, so the healthy sheep also got it. And the pathology was that it was a brain disease, and they had these sponge-like forms in the brain dissections. So basically, they were wondering what it is, and astonishingly, they discovered that it wasn't caused by a virus or a bacteria, which was amazing to the scientists because it had replication, and it also so they didn't know what it was. It also was very highly infective. So what they did was they did from further research, and they discovered there was actually particles, and these particles were made of protein. So they called this prions, and obviously this was massively controversial because it never had been done before, and they were wondering, oh, how is this done? But there's more and more research now to show that it is actually the case. So you may not have heard of prions, but you'll definitely have heard of what the diseases they cause, such as mad cow disease or BSE. So this was caused back in the 80s and 90s. It caused an epidemic of BSE, where loads of farmers used meat and bone meal, which is basically a lot of mashed up dead cows fed to cows. But the problem was that the meat and bone meal was probably contaminated with sheep scrapie, so the cows got the disease. But what caused major concern was when humans started getting the disease called CJD, which is basically a human form of mad cow disease. So what happened was the people got it from eating infected cattle. And astonishing, this isn't the first time that this happened in humans. Back in the 60s in Papua New Guinea, a tribe of cannibals actually got this disease because called Kuru. So there was kind of similarities to CJD. So basically what happened was they discovered that women and children were more likely to get the disease because they got the scraps left from the men, which was the brain and the spinal cord. So they weren't so lucky. So it was probably a case of sporadic CJD that actually happened in the tribe because people were cannibals. But interestingly, the cannibalism was outlawed in 1960, yet the last person from Kuru died in 2005, which is 45 years later. So it has a high latency period. So it could be maybe a sign of our recent BSE outbreak. But what is a prion? So basically these two proteins are the same. They don't look the same, but they have different structures. So the normal structure is found in all of our brains, and then the prion is a different structure. And what happens is that when the prion interacts with a normal protein, it converts it into a prion. So if there's one prion in your brain, you end up having more prions, and then they convert you to more prions. It's kind of like a chain reaction. And then the prions interact to form fibrils, which is these long kind of like things. And it's basically kind of like ice on your windscreen. This is actually a windscreen. It looks like that. And so you basically have loads of fibrils then interact and form plaques. And you may be familiar with plaques because it's actually what happens in Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's isn't caused by prions, but it's actually caused by amyloid beta. And there's some interesting research recently showing that amyloid beta has this prion-like mechanism. They're not prions, but they act like prions. So on the right here is an Alzheimer's brain, and on the left is a scrapie brain, and they have the same kind of plaques. So this year, actually, there's been some really interesting research showing that the amyloid beta is infective on a local level. So if you inject healthy brains with Alzheimer's tissue, the healthy brains get Alzheimer's. And if you inject mice brains with patients from Alzheimer's, they also get Alzheimer's. So it's a kind of a fascinating aspect to PRION research, that it could actually help with Alzheimer's treatment because of the PRION-like mechanism. So I hope you've had a little bit of a shake-up of a protein. They're not all happy. Some of them are a bit sinister. So thanks very much.